I will unleash my thoughts and feelings about James Gunn's Superman next July after we've all seen it. I think that's right and proper. I have frustrated a lot of my viewers by sitting on the fence. I've neither shielded James Gunn or I've neither said it's going to be the worst film ever, because I don't think that's right. I'm pretty confident I know what type of film it's going to be and how it's going to be received, because you and I have been on a long journey going back not just to Man of Steel, but from Superman Returns. But I think from Man of Steel to James Gunn's Superman, we've seen a lot of bad behaviour by this studio. And I think James Gunn's Superman is the end of that journey. And that's, the release of that film is the right time to unleash my views on the film and what I thought of the film. You know, I spent my teenage years in LA. My dad worked for a studio. I've heard a lot of things. Of course I have. I don't believe this film has a huge budget. I certainly don't think it's got the type of budget that Man of Steel did, or the $250 million that Bryan Singer got for Superman Returns. But it's interesting, because Superman's my favourite character in fiction, and I haven't been as hyped for James Gunn's Superman as I was for Superman Returns. But why is that? Well, Bryan Singer, before all this stuff came out about him, was a very highly respected director. Usual Suspects, X-Men, X-Men 2. The man was a pioneering director. He made 3 outstanding, very different films. So I was very, very excited. I followed the production of Superman Returns from the very, very beginning. And it was very, very exciting, and I was very excited to see that film. And I remember going to the cinema. I felt that Superman Returns was a very, very good Superman movie. It wasn't perfect, it had issues, the costume could have been better, but actually it told a really good story. And I think he fulfilled the promise that he made to us within that film, but it didn't make the money, so that franchise was cancelled. Then we went from Superman Returns to Man of Steel, where that made nearly 700 million, but that wasn't enough for the studio, so they booted David Goyer off the project because he set the narrative for Man of Steel. Then they blamed Superman, obviously, for that film, and then they said, well, let's put Batman into the mix, BVS. That nearly made $1 billion, still not enough for the studio. Then they went on to do a Justice League movie. They drove Snyder out. And then we went from, then Berg and Johns decided to lighten it up and bring in Joss Whedon to recycle Zack Snyder's Justice League. That obviously didn't work. Again, they blamed poor Superman for the failure of that film. They benched Superman and they said, we've got a great idea. Why don't we swap Superman for Supergirl? Well, that worked out well in last year's Flash. No. All these decisions are aligned. Bringing in James Gunn to do a Superman film and be co-CEO of DC Studios is all aligned. It's all connected. Peter Safran was involved in the Hamadaverse of DC Films. And now he's the co-CEO, along with James Gunn, of DC Studios. It was right and proper of Zaslav to want a DC Studios. I'm not necessarily sure they brought in the right people to run a DC Studios, but I guess the proof of the pudding is in the eating. And so, in the back of my mind, I am asking questions. I'm asking the question, why there's a rumour that James Gunn will have no test screenings for this Superman film. So what are they hiding? That's something I've brought up in previous videos as well. What are they afraid of? Are they afraid of something, or are they really protecting us from spoilers? That will be something we discover next July. So for me, I think July is the big day where all the nonsense about Snyder and the Snyderverse and all the hype and all the shilling from the Gunn fans, because there's been a lot of people who have put faith in James Gunn for his vision for Superman. So it'll be very, very telling how it's received by them and how it's received by everybody else. Next July, I assure you, I will unleash my genuine thoughts about James Gunn and his Superman movie.